technology is moving too fast. Like, there are always some areas. So sometimes most of the time you have to take risks with somebody that you hire because it's not like they've been there or done that. I think the company should promote and enable people to upscale in different ways. And the employees need to take advantage of that. But ultimately, you don't force somebody to do what they don't want to do.
My experience working with small, even medium-sized companies, is that many, and probably a little bit outside the tech company area now, but looking traditional companies or traditional industries such as industrial sector, let's say, they're not taking full advantage of their data, and therefore the decisions they're making often are not the smartest decisions.
What do you think would be the likelihood that they will be around for another couple of years? We all know that a lot of startups fail in their first couple of years, right? So that's something to assess as well.
Hello, welcome again, Team ET. Today's episode, we're diving into the dynamic world of technological leadership and innovation. We're going to explore the nuances of building and leading effective tech teams, as well as uncover some strategies for driving company growth through technological advances, and discuss future trends that are likely to shape not only the tech industry, but business in general. And whether you're a tech enthusiast, aspiring leader, or even just a seasoned professional, this conversation promises to provide valuable insights for inspiration to navigate our tech landscape. So, of course, I never do it all myself. I always have a guest that comes along and helps lead us through these discussions. So today is no different. We're joined by Arnaud Lucas, a gentleman who blends visionary leadership with cutting-edge technology. So with that, Arnaud, welcome to the ET Project. Great to have you here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
I believe that you're sitting in or very close to the city of Boston in Massachusetts in the US. Is that right?
That's correct. I live in Newton, which is west of Boston, so a short trip away.
And I'm guessing our listeners can already sense that your accent is not typical American. So where do you hail from?
I cannot hide it, can I? So it's funny because I've been in the US now for 26 years. First 8 years in Texas. That was a big shock. And then, after that, I stayed in Boston area. But I'm originally from France and from the north of France, which, north of France tend to have their own strong accent already from a French standpoint. So I guess I carry that to the English side. But yes, I've been in France. I was in France for a long time, but I feel like at this point I spent even longer in the US. So
right. So I can imagine there's a great story behind how you came to be where you are right now in Boston. I wonder if you mind sharing a little bit about the journey, particularly in the tech industry, and how you ended up where you are at the moment as a CTO.
So it's funny because when I was in France, I was finishing my studies, I had to do my military service, and I had to do internship, and most of my internships were in big companies like Post Telecom, Airbus, Honeywell, very big companies in France.
Yes.
But then I fell in love with my now wife, who was studying in Dallas, in Texas. So I joined her in Texas, effectively, and we moved to Houston because that was my opportunity to work there. And in Texas, I did startups. Right, and startups I was working from the carriage house, very building stuff from the garage kind of startup. Which was an amazing experience because what I learned very quickly is that you have to be able to do everything. Like I showed up the first day at work, the person said, "Well, the person in charge of this application left, and we have to do a release tomorrow. Figure it out, build it, make it happen." It's like, okay, we're going to do that then. So, but yeah, it's a great way to, just figure it out, I guess, and
Right.
then wear many hats and do a lot of things. So that part of my life was very impactful. And I think that was the best thing that could have happened early in my career, because it was really, okay, we have a problem, how do we solve it? Okay, let's figure it out, and not be already in a big corporate mindset, if I shall say. And then when my wife finished her studies, which was 8 years later, we're like, okay, we'd like to move. Obviously, we're from France, so I said, let's get closer to France. Even so, it's not like we go to France every week,
Yeah.
but showed up in Boston because a good friend of ours, kind of showed us the beauty of Boston, which beautiful city for sure. And from there, I started doing slightly bigger companies. First at Iron Mountain, which was very interesting because it was just, we're building that next generation digital archiving system based on commodity hardware, these kind of things that are very peculiar, where you want to be able to store information across multiple machines, but you want them to be encrypted in a way that even if somebody stole a machine, then they can decrypt the content, and you want to have that eventual consistency of the. It's super interesting, super technical. So I love that.
Right.
I was an architect there. Then moved really to TripAdvisor, which very different field, exploding company at the time, had to build. That's really where my management and leadership started growing, where I started managing teams and really grew from there, did a lot of hiring, staffing, organizational changes, transformations, and so on. And then I was like, okay, I would love to, after 8 years at TripAdvisor, I stayed there a very long time, doing very different things. I'm like, it would be nice if I can, see if I can be a leader in another company. And that's how I ended up at Wayfair. Uh, so doing very different things at
Yes.
Wayfair during my time in parallel for most of them. So that was super interesting. I really love the company. But after 3.5 years, kind of still the same department, I said, okay, I need to do something else. And at that point, I'm like, I used to do startup in Texas. Would be nice if I do startup again, but as an executive. And that's how I ended up at Wonder for now for the last 2.5 years, effectively being the CTO there.
It's,
But what I love about Wonder is the same thing I love back in Texas, which is wearing many hats, figure things out that I was never exposed to before.
right. Right.
And owning everything tech. So
Right.
tech is everywhere at this point in the business.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to say, 26 years, if I do my maths correctly, that's before the turn of the century.
Oh yes.
And um, I know in America it's more advanced, of course, but this is around the era where the internet is really starting to take hold. It's We had the 2000 scare, right? The talk about the world's going to end because the
The
computer
Y2K.
programming is
Yes.
Y2K. Thank you. Yeah. What are some of the biggest changes that you've observed, let's say just in this last period since you moved to America, in the tech industry? What are some of the things that stand out?
So, there is a lot of changes for sure.
Mm,
Because on different level. I do believe that the internet bubble, Y2K, was really a crazy time for technology, because it meant that if you had even technology on your resume somewhere, then you will be hired to do technology effectively. And I remember working in startups, and startups don't necessarily have the biggest budget,
right.
and I had people there that were supposed to be software engineer that didn't know how to code effectively. So, because crazy times, lack of people, companies will grab whatever they could grab effectively. Which, I think that has changed tremendously over the years. Well, I will argue now the job market on the tech side is tighter for sure. There are plenty of reasons for that, and everybody gets kind of caught in that. So that's a major change. Now, you could argue it's very cyclical as well, meaning that at that time it was crazy time, then the bubble burst and it was a bad time, and then but I never, because I felt like I had the right level of expertise, I've never been scared of losing my job, effectively. And and now I'm at the point like, yeah, I don't know, things are kind of crazy right now, right? Between company kind of assessing the upcoming election, interest rate being so high, even so they just cut down a bit, uh, and overall, macroeconomic things make it so that even the big companies that we thought will just keep on going forever are kind of downsizing or reprioritizing. I don't know what the right word is, but there is definitely a shift from where it used to be for a very long time. Right, the golden years of tech, I feel, are a bit behind us, and maybe they'll come back. We'll see. But right now we have been in that tough position for a couple of years now.
Yeah, it's an interesting time. I mean, technology is just driving everything at the moment, but I can imagine you've been in some really influential positions in different companies, and you mentioned startups a few times. What are some of the biggest challenges that companies are facing with technology and scaling their organization? What are you coming across as you engage in these different companies?
So for me, technology is a tool. And you're right, it's a tool that's everywhere used in a company, right? Tool for collaboration, tool for forecasting, tool for delivering the product and what you want to do for the customer. But ultimately, I think what's important is really, is the people that you have in the company, and how you empower them, how you structure teams, and how you support them, including with technology, and also most importantly, making sure you do the right thing for the customer. Right. So I strongly believe, and that's something I learned, especially at Wayfair, that if you do the right thing for the customer will buy. And so that's how you generate business, right? Is you solve the problem for the customer, you do the right thing for the customer will come. Or not come, but at least buy. And then you need customer to come in some ways. That's marketing. And technology is just here to help out in any way we can. And so one of the big roles as a technologist is not just technology as a result, right? Because it's at the end of the day, it's how the technology organization can deliver the biggest impact for the business. And the technology organization deliver the biggest impact by using technology to do so. And as a technical or technologist leader, my goal is to have the best team, organized, structured, empowered, supporting the best way, so that they deliver the best results that have ultimately the best impact on the business. So I'm very much a people first, even though I'm an engineer at heart, but I believe it's all about the people, right? Without the people, there is nothing. And both on the customer side and obviously on the employees of the company.
Well, let's dive into that a little bit further. I mean, I agree with you 100%. People are really the center of our world as leaders. So do you have any guidance or approach that you use, particularly when it comes to scaling high-performing teams? I mean, what are some of the qualities, perhaps, that you look for in top engineering talent in your team? How do you foster that? Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. For me, obviously there is some technical attribute, like do they know at least the minimum, because we could train people, and we do all the time, because it's not like in technology you cannot know everything. I will argue in any job you cannot know everything, but especially in technology, that's not possible. Technology is moving too fast. Like, there are always some areas. So sometimes most of the time you have to take risks with somebody that you hire, because it's not like they've been there or done that. But there is some fundamentals that you assess. And this is the easy part, right? Because usually you can have a very technical discussion, you can do a technical exercise, you can do something to assess that. That's the easy part. The most difficult part, in my opinion, is that what we call the soft skills or the cultural component, or will that person be a good culture add to the company? And there are definitely some attributes that I like to see in people, no matter what the company is, right? Part of that is because I have strong values as well, and I like people that share those values, right? Values basically about transparency, meaning that I've worked with managers or managed managers, for example, that didn't want to tell me what was going on with their team. That's a problem for me because, it's not that I will feel everybody has problems, right? Every team has problems. But if you don't tell me, I cannot help you. And that's a problem. I cannot support you. I cannot brainstorm how to best deal with those concerns, right? And just because they are effectively their pride while preventing them from doing that. And I think that's a bad place to be. I always make mistake, right? I love getting feedback, right? So that one, I can fix a mistake. Two, I make sure I don't do it again. But if people don't tell me that, that's a problem. So I think that transparency on both sides, I think is very important, right? So when something goes wrong, I have no problem telling my boss, the CEO, that something went wrong. But also learn that it's good to have somebody else that knows how to fix it at the same time. Like say, okay, this went wrong. This is what I'm doing now, and this is how I believe we can deal with it. So, and then I start having that discussion, right? I think that's super important. That's a strong aspect of the strong value I have of transparency. Then there is a potential for ownership. Ownership can mean very different things. People kind of tend to see that as passion or being motivated, but for me, it's more than that. Yes, I like people that are motivated, that feel like that they're passionate about their work. But more importantly, what I like is people that have no concern taking ownership over something. They want to take ownership over something, right? Whatever you give them, they're like, yes, give it to me. And then they want to figure it out, just like I did in my early startup journey, where like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'll figure it out. Like, give it to me, and I'll learn, I'll improve, and I'll make it better and better and better, and drive towards success, right? So that's what I like to see as well. And I believe it's half of the battle, right? If somebody is motivated, if somebody wants to take that ownership, I believe that, that person, even if they have gaps somewhere else, will do what they need to do to ultimately be successful.
So ownership could be defined by different parallel words: commitment, accountability, responsibility. They're all part and parcel of the same package, I guess. So if I hear what you're saying correctly, it's somehow the culture of the team, the culture of the organization that you're looking for within your people, that this whole group promotes or explores ownership as a whole.
Yeah, exactly. But another way to see it, there are two axes, right? One is that we pay tech people a lot of money, right? So these are not cheap labor. And I will agree, it doesn't matter if it's cheap labor or not, right? Tech people are well paid. So the last thing you want is to tell them what to do, right? You hire them so that they can think. They can think about a problem, and they can be better at that than you are, effectively, in the area that they're on.
Right.
The two is the fact that, so I go back to a book I really enjoy called the Extreme Ownership Mindset. So extreme ownership, how US Navy SEALs lead and win. And one thing that they say in the book is that everybody needs to be a leader. Everybody, Navy SEALs, but everybody in the company needs to be a leader. All right, so at the end of the day, for me, it's a, that domain ownership is a great way to assess leadership, right?
Yeah.
And to get people to start leading in their own way. And that at the end of the day, that's really what I'm looking for. But yeah, sometimes people haven't demonstrated that in the past, and that's okay, right? But do they have the attributes, if you want, to be able to give that ownership, get that ownership, and therefore becoming that leader that I want them to be.
Yeah. You mentioned just a moment ago about the technological industry is changing so rapidly that the skill level or the skill sets of the people needs to be constantly evolving as well. And I'm wondering, we talk about upskilling, we talk about reskilling. How do you, as a leader of a tech organization, ensure that the people in the business are doing that or doing what is
Yes.
needed?
That's a great question, because you're right. It's very easy for people to fall behind on the tech curve. I think that's, it's on both sides. I think the company should promote and enable people to upskill in different ways, and the employees need to take advantage of that. But ultimately, you don't force somebody to do what they don't want to do. So now there are multiple ways to get people to upskill, right? Yeah, and I think it depends on what is how people learn. Definitely, people learn in different ways, right? I learn a lot by reading. I know right now YouTube and other trainings, video platform trainings are very popular. That's not how I learn. Like I like to skim through blogs and articles and books, and that's my way of learning.
Yes.
There's another way of learning as well that I employed since TripAdvisor, and that's through collaboration. Meaning that at TripAdvisor I created a lot of guilds. These are these informal networks where people share, right? They meet once a while, they share on different topics. Then at Wayfair I started to introduce something called leagues, which is like guilds, but for a specific discipline, right? And that came from the fact that originally I was kind of distributing like the mobile engineers, different organizations. So how can the mobile engineer keep on growing from the tech aspect and keep on strategizing together about the future of mobile, right? So be able to create these groups effectively of people that can effectively learn from each other, and then come up with different ideas about what to push next, right, together. I think for me that's one of the best way I found really to upskill. And then obviously you have different kind of trainings, right, that people can do on their own, they can do in classes, they can do in groups. Now a big issue is actually not necessarily to provide that platform, which because there are multiple platforms that exist that people can use at their leisure. The bigger issue is for them to have time to do so. And so for example, at Wayfair, we establish learning time, right? There is a certain amount of time every week that were dedicated to that. And if people want to do more, they can do more, but at least that there is this kernel of because people say, I don't have time for that. Well, let's make the time, right? So that you have the ability to actually do that and learn and you kind of there are other ways too. For example, for some companies I provided a learning budget where I was like, here is some amount of money you can use to learn. But if you don't use it, it's gone at the end of the year, right? So just like you mentioned at the beginning, you have so many things to do in this calendar year. Well, something you have that budget, you don't use it, sorry, you lose it. So it's kind of this notion of, I don't want to lose that budget, right? They're giving me money to learn, I need to use it now. So this kind of stuff. So if you don't have a platform, but you have a budget instead, and you kind of incentivize that with people to use it.
You also spoke about a little bit earlier about customers and being customer centric, for want of a term.
Yes.
How do you go about that in looking at it from a strategic point of view and looking at the technology that needs to be introduced in a company, how do you ensure that the technology is supporting that customer-centric ideal?
Well, first of all, before you even talk technology, you have a good sense of your business vision and mission.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, a lot of companies say, well, we want to be the leading meta search engine or whatever. That's not really a vision and mission, right? Because it's too abstract, it's too far away, it doesn't tell you anything.
Right.
So I like to center it down, especially in startup, to something that's within a year or two time frame, right? Something fairly short. Where we want, and in that case, that vision and mission is more like how, as a company, we believe we can solve a problem that the customer has, right? And then it becomes much more concrete, right? So meaning that you potentially identify a cohort of customers that you are really looking after, you identify a certain set of problems that you believe you can solve, and that's where it starts, right? Because without doing that, then you cannot come up with a proper technology vision. That's not possible. So really understanding what are the customer problems, which ones you plan to tackle as a company, and then once you have that defined, then you can start planning on how to solve those, right? So you can do, like I like to do OKRs on the quarterly, as part of quarterly planning, but you can set yourself objectives every quarter. Okay, I want to go after this. Okay, how do we measure that we are being successful? How do we measure that? And so on. And we keep on iterating and iterating and iterating whilst solving that customer problem, because we never, and we should not solve in one big shot. Like remember early in my career, in some of the big companies, they were saying, oh, it's going to take 9 months to release a new version of our software. That's not the thing anymore. So, usually, especially when you're online, you're a SaaS application or website, a B2C website, but you deliver things every day, right? You release things every day. So it's all about iterating and iterating and iterating. And yes, you understand where you want to be, but you iterate toward that, and along the way you learn.
Okay.
You look at your metrics, you look at the feedback from the customer and so on, and you learn, and you may end up in a different direction, different spot than one you want it to be, but that's okay. That's actually a better spot. So I think that's how you address the customer issue, which is less about technology and more about knowing what problems you want to solve, and then going after them in a very iterative way. And then technology as a tool is here to support that, right? Because you need to develop new features, you need to change how you're doing things. Sometimes it's because, well, the customer is complaining that we're not moving fast enough. Okay, how do we move faster, right? So things like that.
There's a lot of impetus in what you're saying there, leading towards data-driven decision making. So you mentioned looking at metrics, looking at things that would help you understand. My experience working with small, even medium-sized companies, is that many, and probably a little bit outside the tech company area now, but looking traditional companies or traditional industries such as industrial sector, let's say, they're not taking full advantage of their data, and therefore the decisions they're making often are not the smartest decisions, or not as smart as they could be if they were leveraging their data to inform them better. How would you advise those sorts of companies to, if you were coming in as a consultant, let's say, how could they leverage software technology to help them with better decision making?
It's not just the decision making, right? When something goes wrong, you want something to tell you. And the first thing that will tell you is not just you by looking somewhere, is if the system tells you, right? Is you get an alert, you get paged because something goes wrong, right? So data is critical throughout, both on the technology side and the business side, right? To understand where we are. And then for that to make, to your point, the best decisions on how to get where we want to be. there are two aspects of really, well, there are more than two, but it's a multiple step process, right? First of all, companies have a lot of data, always. I've never been in a company that don't have enough data. Even small companies, right? Because you get data of all kind of places. The first step, though, is to cut that data and put it in one place. That's the first step, right? People talk about data lake, right? But the point is that you use your Snowflake or your Redshift or whatever you like, right? And you put that in one place, right? And it doesn't mean that that's your source of truth, right? It's just a matter that, okay, you have all this data across all these systems, all these partners of this data that you can collect. You take that, you put in one place. So that's the first step, right? The problem after that becomes, okay, now I have all the data, I have it in one place, I have so much data, what do I do with it? And a lot of times too much data. So, but the question becomes, how do you make it actionable? And who do you want to make it actionable for? Right? My belief is that and that comes back to my belief about ownership, is every employee should have access to the data they need, preferably in a self-service fashion. I mean, if they need data, they can just look at it. They don't need somebody else to go through, like a data analyst or anybody to gather that data. Now, it's very idealistic, I know, but what I'm always shooting for is that 80% of the time, people should just be able to get the data they need, and then 20% sure they need additional help. But then the big, well, how do you make that 80% happen? And so there are two aspects to that. One is to be able to, it's a lot of data. Is there a way to create a data model in a way that's simple enough to interrogate, right? So, which means sometimes you want to extract information from multiple tables and put into one, like denormalizing and other things. That's one way. Two is you want to have the tool to make it easy, because if you need people to write SQL, even people that know SQL, like I do, it's already a friction point if you have to write a SQL for any data you're trying to get, right? So if you have tools, like great UI tools that you can go to and click, and get the data you need, that's how you reduce the friction. That's how you make sure that people grab the data. Because what happens in a lot of companies is that they have the data, but because it's so hard to get it in a way that, to get the right data that you can act on, people could ask others for help, but most of the time they just give up. They say, yeah, too hard. I'm just going to go with my gut. Which there's a place for gut thinking. Like I'm not, but usually even when you have a gut feel about what you should be doing next, you always want to back it up with some data. To say at least there is something there that I can see from the data. So I think it's providing, at the end of the day, it's providing each employee the right tools that they feel confident that they can grab the data as they need to, at least most of the time.
And that highlights potentially another question I hear particularly from maybe the smaller business leaders. They seem to freeze because technology is advancing so rapidly in their mind, at least, and they're concerned that if they choose something now, in 6 months it's going to be out of date, and they will have invested the time and the effort to install it and to get everyone on board with it, and then there may be some new shiny object on the horizon that they could install. How do you advise people there? Like what is the process for staying current?
So I think it's less of a problem now than it used to be, because now a lot of the applications you're using are effectively SaaS, right? So they are online. Now it brings other concerns from security and other aspects, but ultimately what that means is that it's like a horse race. You need to bet on the right horse, right? At first, or at least a good enough horse that you know that horse will not be last in a race. But if you bet on the right horse, then you believe that that horse will keep on going, right? And then they will finish the race. Then that's okay, because what that means for SaaS application, they will keep on improving their products, right? It's their interest to keep on improving the product, right? So you pay a subscription or you pay usage of some kind. And then on their side, they use that money, or they should be using that money to keep on improving the product, so that they keep on leveling up with the rest, with their competitors and the rest of the ecosystem, right? In different ways. And I've seen that a lot of products that we are using, effectively, SaaS product that we are using, where they keep on doing that. And then they started introducing features that we didn't know we needed at first. Like, oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I could use that. So especially on the visibility front. And so I think it's that, right? So therefore the question becomes how to bet on the right horse, right? And so that's more of an art than a science, right? Be able to look at reviews, what people are saying about ease of use and other aspects that's important to you, but also what's the company's footings, right? If you go with a startup that has been around for 3 months and have this product, that sounds interesting, sounds great, but it's like they are 3 months old. Like, what do you think will be the likelihood that they will be around for another couple of years? We all know that a lot of startups fail in their first couple of years, right? So that's something to assess as well. When you use open source, because there are plenty of great open source tools, same thing, you tend to look at the activity in the open source projects to say, okay, is there a community behind it? Like, or will it get deprecated in 3 months because nobody wants to work on it anymore? Because ultimately, that's the story, right? If a software is not getting updated, it's dead, right? And so you don't want dead software. That's the thing. So that's ultimately one big thing to assess, which is not easy, right? Yeah, because it's like predicting the future, and I'm bad at that. So
exactly.
try to piece some things together.
So, I mean, you've got a lot of experience, and therefore you've probably been able to get a lot more clarity around how to do this. I'm wondering would you have any advice for younger leaders in the technology industry who are just coming into a similar role to you, and how can they advise their senior management team about the right direction with, setting technology strategy within the company?
So there are a couple of principles I think that are important. There is a couple of anti-patterns that I've not noticed in the past that I believe people should try to avoid. There is one big anti-pattern that's very known, especially for leaders that are not as experienced, which is kind of going after the latest buzz. Right. So once you have a lot of experience, right, you can see this latest buzz. Right? We talk about the internet bubble, we talk about Y2K, but there are others that are much more recent, like crypto and AI. Now, these technologies are here to stay, don't get me wrong, but there is also this period where things are much bigger and this big bubble that ultimately is going to burst at some point. And then the question is, well, when does bubble burst? What's left from that? And so I think that's one anti-pattern, is going after the latest buzz, looking at the latest buzz, this is our big hammer that's going to solve everything. I guarantee you, it won't. Now, we solve something, I'm sure it will. So it's trying to figure out, okay, what it can solve and what it will not solve. And always do that in the perspective of the business. Meaning that don't just use technology for the sake of technology, right? Use technology because it's going to help you solve a business need, right? Make a business impact. So that's one anti-pattern I've seen. The other anti-pattern is to make it more complicated than it needs to be, right? Your car say, oh yeah, in 10 years from now, we're going to have 1 million customers. And you're like, but you don't even have one customer yet. Why do you want to create this big architecture with all the systems perfectly decoupled and blah, 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 where you haven't even proven yet that you have a product, right? So I think that's something I've seen as well. In that case, no, you start very small, right? Everything can fit on a couple of machines. That's cool, right? And then you start there, and then once you prove that there is a need, then you scale your architecture to the next level, next level, right? That's the architecture. I think what's important is to keep your architecture flexible so that you can actually do that. You can extend, if you want, your architecture as you go. So extensibility is very important, so that you don't also get the other anti-pattern where, oh, we're a startup, but you have been around for 15 years. And at this point, you are not the size of a startup anymore. And yet they still do things like they were a startup. The point is that what happens in that case is that you have a lot of people working on a messy code base, to say the least, and that is slowing everybody down. Right? So there are all these anti-patterns I've seen over the years. And so I don't have a good direction for you, but I know what not to do.
While you were talking about that, then I was drifting back to the startups, and I guess one of the things a startup is trying to do is they're trying to bring in innovation into whatever field they're in to solve a pain that they see that hasn't been addressed, right? So I talk about them being disruptors rather than those being disrupted. And if we look at technology, I guess, and we look to the horizon of what's coming, I know it's possible we could open a whole can of worms here, but is there anything that you see on the horizon that's got you excited in terms of technology, potentially the near future? Let's not go too far into the future, but in the near future, do you have anything that's got you excited?
I mean, AI obviously is the latest and greatest, and personally, I'm much more excited about LLMs and GPTs than I was about crypto. I see, because, and the reason for that is I believe that a tool like a GPT or LLM or generative AI overall can, just like technology is everywhere, I believe that generative AI can be used in a lot of different places. Right, so some ways can be used, I believe, is in automation, right? Be able to automate tasks, repeated tasks. And people talk about replacing white collar workers and things like that. I'm not sure the technology is there yet. I'm not sure it will ever be. I don't know. Right? But I can see not necessarily technology replacing them, but more augmenting them, right? Making sure that there are something that they were doing that were very repetitive and mundane that now the AI can do for them. And so, which is why for those white collar, including myself, I'd be able to use those tools is important because that's what that's where the world is going, effectively. So that's one. There is also I create process optimization, but the fact that AI can analyze data and come up with potentially gaps, inefficiencies, and things that you didn't notice before, or it will take a long time for you to notice.
Yes.
Right? So there is a way for the AI to start spotting these things in your data set in a way that it would have been very difficult to do before. We'll need something very specialized and focusing a lot of time on. And AI can also help with decision making, right? Because they can ingest vast amount of data, right? They can summarize that data in a way that say, oh, okay, now I understand. And then you can, to your point, they can help with the people making data-driven decision, even so they are not directly looking at the data, because it's just too complicated. That's one. The other side is more to enable a more customized experience. So a lot of B2C business, at least that I've been at, have a lot of customers. So be able to give them the proper experience is actually hard because it means that to do that you need a lot of people, which usually companies don't invest in. So things like customer service, proper recommendations for their needs, to solve their problem and their needs, I think are things that AI can help with, especially the recommendation side, because that's really something that we're doing with machine learning anyway. I think AI can boost that to the next level. customer service as well. Even so, I'm not a big fan of, I'm very much a proponent of responsible AI. So where there are multiple tenets to that, but one tenet I care about is making sure that the human being looks at the input and the output of the AI. Right? I don't trust the technology enough. Part of it is also on us, right? What you ingest in, right? Because AI is all about the training data, right? So what you ingest in, are you sure you're ingesting the right thing into the AI? And what kind of output is it giving? And do you validate that, yes, that's the right output that you want.
Right.
And then innovation, right? So I think AI can provide new ideas and concepts based on that amount of data, can do create stuff. Like I know designers, using generative AI to create splendid images or layout and so on. So, but the problem is that with AI as well, that's why I want to be careful. There are plenty of considerations that I want to be very careful about that, right? Because it could put companies in a very bad place. One that we started talking about is bias, right? The fact that AI is trained on data available, in your own data set or on the internet, depending on how you train your AI. And the data has bias built into it.
Yeah.
And so, whatever the input is, that's what you get as an output. So that's something to be careful about. We talk about, already mentioned, job displacement. So right now, I don't see necessarily AI doing that, even so there's been reports from Amazon or others saying, oh, we replaced workers with AI. I haven't seen that firsthand. I see more AI as augmenting the task, but at some point, maybe the AI will be, generative AI will be good enough that you can just trust that, trust the AI to own something. Which seems scary to me, but
Yeah.
well, maybe we'll get there. I don't know. And then obviously anything regarding privacy and security. I think it's clear. Like, I've already seen, for example, specific prompts and obviously even more input data, like a virus corrupting the AI. I've seen that. And so that's one aspect. And obviously the privacy aspect, when you're meaning that your AI disclosing data that was not meant to be public or not meant public in a fair way. Some because they were copyrighted, some because they were just personal information that now he has access to. So there are a lot of things to consider as well, which is why I believe that for me the most exciting use of AI is really use AI to look at your own data. I talk about companies having too much data, right? So put the AI on it, train the AI on your own data. That way you don't have problem of copyright, and hopefully your data is, you do some validation of front so you don't introduce something like very problematic. Train your AI on your data and get new insights, faster insights from your own data. I think that's what I'm very excited about.
Right. Right. Well, I think that sounds like a great place to wrap up the conversation. We could talk about so many things, but I have to say my own perspective is from somebody outside looking in, it really feels like we're all playing leading roles in a modern day sci-fi movie at the moment. It's the rate of transition with technology that never existed 2 days ago is now coming to market is just incredible. It's a really fascinating topic, I have to say, Arnaud. Excellent conversation. Thank you for that. Are you active on social media and wanting people to connect with you at all?
Oh, yes, definitely. So I'm very active on LinkedIn. Tend to, well, I said to reply to every message people send me on LinkedIn. I try my best. But so definitely LinkedIn. I'm also on Instagram, but more to shush. I like to bake and I like to garden. So Instagram is most used to show off my cakes than anything else. So I would say LinkedIn is the best place by far.
All right. Well, we'll put the link in the show notes and make sure people can access you. Well, thanks for being a guest on the ET project. Been a great conversation. All the best with the career. All the best with keeping up with the technology. I'm sure many of us will be watching the tech space to see what new twist is coming on the horizon or around the corner. And you're in the center of it. So we'll definitely keep an eye on what you're up to as well. So thank you.
Thank you. I mean, yeah, technology definitely keeps you on your toes, that's for sure.
So what are you waiting for? Hit the subscribe button below and click on the bell icon so I can pop up in your feed occasionally with a great tip for your ultimate growth.